SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
When addiction takes control, getting help can change everything. Parkwood Behavioral Health System offers compassionate, evidence-based addiction treatment for adults right here in Mississippi. Take the first step today. Visit parkwoodbhs.com. Healing starts here. With limited exceptions, physicians are not employees or agents of this facility.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
All right, it's down to 4 in the World Cup. Down to 4.
Yeah, on one side of the bracket, you got England and Argentina. And what a history they have, both on and off the pitch. And then on the other side, you've got Spain.
Yeah.
And I just went blank.
I can't remember either. I heard it this morning. France, that's right.
the team that has two teams they could field, and they'd both be just as good.
Incredible.
Yeah, so you've got, honestly, France and Spain not going to be as interesting as you could tell because I couldn't even remember the teams playing, even though there's only 4.
Yeah.
Really focusing on that Argentina-England match because they've had controversies at past World Cups, the most famous of which happened in Mexico in '86, where Maradona, playing for Argentina, put 2 past them, and one of them was just blatant cheating, and the other's considered one of the goals of the century. So it's a wild history. And then if you look at off the pitch, in the early 80s, before I was even here, you had the Falklands War where they were fighting over an island off the coast of Argentina over who controls it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'll be interesting with England finally seemingly coming together and playing as a team instead of having a truce from their club matches. And Argentina has Messi, so
yeah,
he can always make something magical happen.
I got to tell the folks that I was in Lowe's a couple of weeks ago and shopping there in the lawn and garden tools area, the grills area where they have all that stuff, walking through there actually to the garden shop, and there's this gigantic blow-up of Lionel Messi. You know it's him. I mean, you can tell it's a soccer player dressed in a soccer uniform and I think holding a soccer ball, but I went around to the rear, and sure enough, there's Messi's name on the jersey, on the back of the jersey, an exact replica. And I shot a photo of it. This was like on a Sunday morning. To Rhino, said, I got your Christmas present for next year. Oh, my gosh. He, I believe, the highest compensated professional athlete on the planet, correct?
If he's not, he has been in years past.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's been 2 or 3 years ago now. I think it's 3 years ago now that he moved from European football to the MLS. And he plays at Inter Miami, the team owned by David Beckham, another world-famous superstar in the world of soccer. But Messi chose to come to America and to play in MLS in America over what would have been a world record amount of money that was being thrown at him by the Saudi League. They wanted to give him a deal that was worth something like $500 million a year.
Yeah.
And he just said, no, I think I'd rather raise my kids in America.
I do remember that. Well, just taking a look at the latest, his guaranteed compensation, base salary of $25 million, guaranteed compensation of $28 million, But I didn't know he had these revenue sharing agreements with the companies that he endorses. Apple and Adidas specifically are big time. Well, his annual compensation, ESPN reports between 70 and 140 million. That seems like a big delta, but that's a bunch. Incredible.
Yeah, I want to say technically it's Ronaldo from Portugal that's the highest paid in the world, but he plays in the Saudi league, and they just throw money at the stars.
Yeah. Well, the big news over the weekend, of course, the rather abrupt passing of South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. It has now been revealed that he died of an aortic dissection. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I know that is cardiovascular disease and related to the heart. He died hours after returning from a trip to Ukraine, and the president said he spoke to Senator Graham Saturday evening, and that was his last call with him. The president and Senator Graham, he was 71 years old, by the way. They've had a bit of a love-hate kind of relationship, I think mainly because after 2020 and the incursion of the Capitol, I think the senator had some rather harsh words for the president, but they've since reconciled, and it's fair to say Senator Graham was one of Trump's biggest proponents and supporters. And I think most people would agree that if it weren't for Senator Graham, Brett Kavanaugh may not have been confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. And the president had some very kind words to say about him as well. He was a staunch supporter of Ukraine and, again, died hours after returning from a trip to Kiev where he met with President Zelensky. Now, under state law in South Carolina, the governor, that would be Governor Henry McMaster, a Republican, he will make an immediate appointment to fill Senator Graham's seat. That's for the remainder of his term, which expires in January. However, he was up for re-election this fall, so the state of South Carolina has to hold a redo of the primary. And it would work the same way as the original primary did earlier in the year. If there are more than two candidates and someone fails to achieve the 50% plus one mark, there will be a runoff, and then a nominee will be selected, and they will advance to the general election in November. Prospective names to replace the senator, there are a number of names being floated. I found it kind of interesting, Rhino, and a bit morbid that some of them are already like raising their hand talking about it. I mean, the body's not even cold yet. What does that tell you about politics in our country? I found that a bit disgusting. Can't you give it 24 hours? My gosh. So,
because sadly, a plurality of politicians have an understanding of attention, the news cycle, and social media that is filtered only through the lens of how do I get the most attention in the shortest amount of time.
So true. So sad.
When you filter it through that lens, they only see it as, well, this is the most attention this topic is going to get. Is in the immediate aftermath, so I have to ride this wave of internet attention in order to get the most bang for my buck.
It sure seems that way. I don't know if I'm the only person that found that a little off-putting, but I did. I don't know. It seems like the focus ought to be on the fact that the man died and his legacy and something more positive and uplifting. I know a lot of people didn't agree with the senator. I get that. And there's some who are celebrating his death, which is sad as well. But the prospective names to replace the senator include the lieutenant governor of South Carolina, Pam Yvette, Representative Ralph Norman, Representative Nancy Mace. But the one that kind of shocked me was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He from South Carolina. He among the prospective replacements. I found that a bit interesting, that one. The other ones I would expect, right? Well, the lieutenant governor, 2 members of the House. I guess you could say, yeah, that's kind of expected. But I didn't see it coming in the name of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. I just didn't see that coming. Your markets are down today because there are a fresh round of strikes on Iran. And Iran, of course, is also striking back, including its neighbors in the Middle East. And the president just issued a truth on his Truth Social platform. He says the strait is open and will remain open with or without Iran. We are reinstating the blockade. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
The One Body. Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell. Well, it's down at the end of Lonely Street, that heartbreak hotel where I'll be just so lonely, baby. Well, I'm so lonely, I'll be just so lonely, I could die. Although it's always crowded, you still can find some room for broken-hearted lovers to cry there in the gloom. Be so, I'll be just so lonely, baby. I'll be just so lonely, I'll be so lonely, they could die.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio at 11:05 today. It's Dr. Phyllis Polk Johnson. Dr. Johnson is the CEO and Executive Director of the Mississippi State Board of Nursing. We'll get an update from Dr. Johnson concerning the nursing workforce in the state of Mississippi. You know, the Democratic Socialists of America want you to know we're not communists. Yet their platform and their constitution says otherwise. They want you to know they're not a party. They're a political movement as well. Now, I spent a little time perusing the DSA website. And you look at the Constitution, as it is called, the DSA Constitution and Bylaws. Article 1, of course, is just the name of the organization. Okay. But Article 2, the purpose. So, I want you to listen to the first statement. And the purpose of the Democratic Socialists of America, political activists. They want you to know that. They're not a party. Quote, we are socialists because we reject an economic order based on private profit, alienated labor. What exactly is that? What's alienated labor? Gross inequalities of wealth and power, discrimination based on race, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability status, age, religion, and national origin, and brutality and violence in defense of the status quo. Now, the opening phrase in that statement, we are socialists because we reject an economic order based on private profit. Help me understand how that does not rise to the level of communism. Because technically speaking, the distinction between socialism and communism has always been, well, socialism supports central planning of the economy, government, if you will, who determines, real simply, the means and volume of production of goods and services. It stops short of government owning the companies that produce said goods and services. Whereas in communism, key distinction there is no private property, no profit. Government does own, operate, receive all of the proceeds from the production of goods and services. Government does dictate who works where, basically, and how much they make. I think they're kidding themselves with this feeble attempt to convince Americans they're not communists. And, of course, Rhino, when you look at the splash page, I know you're not confused here, but there is the splash page is a photo, if you will, a graphic, and that graphic starts out with big block letters, Democratic Socialists win, and sort of the tagline of that is, when the working class fights, we win. But below that are like bust shots, if you will, kind of a collage of 8-10 people that are obviously supporters of, members of this movement. And I know you're not surprised. They just all look like losers. And once again, I hate to draw a conclusion based on physical appearance. They just look like misfits. Like they're trying to look funny to like call attention to themselves and
conforming to nonconformity.
Exactly. But of course they've got, you love this, they've got the obligatory inclusion of either a physician or a nurse, a healthcare professional with a white coat and the stethoscope around their neck. They want you to know they're all about the free health care, Medicare for all, and all that junk. That's a top ring end of their platform, right? So they now have announced, however, they want to eliminate the U.S. Senate, replace the president and the Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to Congress. They want amnesty for all immigrants, and they want defunding of the Department of War. So they essentially want this country to shut down its military. That's where they stand. Man, oh man. And if you look at, again, some of their key policy priorities, they believe in a strong labor movement. And here's what they say. Capitalism pits us against each other. And workplaces are fundamentally authoritarian unless workers can self-organize and build collective power. This is why people build unions and why employers undermine them. It is also why the capitalists, I'm reading again from their website, as a class constantly promote narratives about unions that frame them as unnecessary, undemocratic, or ineffective. We know better, and we're building worker power in every region of the country. Worker power. Oh, my gosh. Unbelievable. They, of course, are big supporters of the Green New Deal. They say the climate crisis is an emergency. They want public utilities under public control. this is scary, in my view, that this movement is picking up so much steam. And the Democrats, honestly, the party is deeply fractured. And that could play into the Republicans' hands in the midterms. They've got the crazy and the super crazy. That's kind of the way to describe that party these days. But I did see that Representative Ro Khanna, who wholeheartedly endorsed Senate candidate in Maine, wacko nutcase Graham Plattner, who did on CNN over the weekend, he did say he regretted his endorsement. He said that pretty clear evidence of sexual misconduct was the line in the sand for him. But you see this, Rhino, there's still a bunch of people that are mad that he exited. They still want to vote for that nutcase. I also saw some report he got more votes as a U.S. Senate candidate in the state of Maine than any candidate in the history of the state of Maine. That just shows you how crazy things are in this country. And I'm glad we have a president that recognizes this and is fighting back against this. And I told you about the social media post I had last week where I basically stated that the midterms could in fact be a choice between the Declaration of Independence and the Communist Manifesto. And I got attacked by, it was a public post from a privacy perspective, and it got widely distributed, and it's got a couple of thousand shares on it now, mainly by wackos, and they just big time attacked me, which is fine. I just laughed at them because they're so stupid. But you don't know the difference between communism and socialism. Yeah, I do. You're trying to hide your communist inclinations by veiling it with this socialist nonsense description. That's not what you're about whatsoever. You're for full-blown communism. And you know, at the end of the day, what these people's problems is, and I know I said this last week, they're freaking lazy. They're just lazy butts that don't want to work, don't want to contribute, don't want to submit to the winner-loser dynamic of capitalism. They just want to be a loser and government take care of them. Coming right back.
From theseabrook.com. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
This just in, the president on his Truth Social is recommending Graham's, quote, Senator Graham's wonderful sister to serve as interim senator until a special election can be held. And the only comment she made was that she's devastated right now and really not thinking about that. So that's an interesting development. Quote, actually, I'm just kind of like devastated right now. Darlene Graham Nordone said in a brief phone call to the media. Interesting. I didn't see that one coming whatsoever. But of course, it's just holding the seat for the duration of the year. An actual election will be conducted in about a month, I think, as I recall the rules in South Carolina. Candidates can file to run in a special election. A special election is necessary because the senator was the Republican primary or the Republican nominee for the general election coming up this fall. And so the Republicans have got to elect a replacement nominee to face off with the Democrat senatorial candidate coming up this fall. So that's pretty interesting. We shall see certainly where all that goes. Here at home, turns out this morning that the bus operators in the city of Jackson, JTRAN, as the system is known, they are on strike because contract negotiations have broken down. There is a union that these drivers are members of, the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1208, went on strike this morning after the contract negotiations broke down. So they walked off the job at 4 a.m. after rejecting the latest offer. MV Transportation is the third party that has a contract with the city to operate the bus system. So we shall see what happens with that. There's been a lot of talk across the state, of course, on the incident on Horn Island. It's garnered national attention. We haven't discussed it too much on this program. I know our colleague Richard Cross has on the morning show. I don't know that there's a lot of new information about this at this point. It's going to take a while, likely, to get an autopsy, which I think will be extremely telling. I believe there were some protests, if I'm not mistaken, held over the weekend in Ocean Springs. I did see a piece penned by an Ocean Springs coach that I thought was very good, very fair. I've seen that. I know we had Commissioner Sean Tyndall on. I believe he's been on multiple news outlets, was on last week. He's discussing it. But, again, not a great deal can be said at this point. Somewhat restrictive. And then there's a question of how much of that information from the autopsy will be released to the public, how much will just remain in confidence with the family. This is a terrible thing, of course. I hate to see that all the race baiters are out in full force. I think Al Sharpton's coming into Mississippi, right? Is this another situation, Rhino, where you've got these race people, these race pimps, if you will, are celebrating this, honestly, because it gives them some fuel for the fire? I've always said that the jackpot is when it's a white police officer and a black person involved in some sort of altercation incident involving the police. It doesn't really matter if the police were fully within the law and their right of defense or their duty to protect the safety of others. Doesn't really matter. All they look at is, okay, white police officer, a person who works for an institution of law enforcement, carries a gun, has power and authority, and a minority person who had some sort of interaction with that police officer. You know how that works. It does feel like, honestly, I'm not exaggerating here, that they celebrate that. And look no further than the Southern Poverty Law Center, arguably one of the most racial organizations in the country. And now we've learned that they've actually invested in exactly what they say they stand against to try to create some activity so that they can get attention and raise money. That's why it's pretty easy to conclude that that's what's going on here. It's about attention. It's about money. It's about power. And I hate that because you're essentially leveraging, you're exploiting the death of a teenager. That's despicable. But that's what you're doing. Unbelievable. So that's all we know. You know anything else, Rhino, at this point? There's really not anything, right?
No, I mean, the family has got Ben Crump doing some digging. Colin Kaepernick has offered to, I think he's actually already paid for the private autopsy. The results for that will likely be out before the state's autopsy. Tyler Perry offered to pay the expenses for the funeral. But besides that, the investigation is ongoing. There have been some statements put out by various investigative agencies. I believe the friend of the victim has made an appearance and talked to a couple outlets and publications. The parents have made a couple appearances. But the whole community is reeling at this point. And it's not helpful for anybody to... It's not going to bring justice any faster. It's not going to bring a soul back to the living. But you're going to have people with limited intellect and an axe to grind that are going to make this about themselves and about their belief systems and not about the truth, and the grieving families be damned.
Just the tragedy of the death of a young person. Forget the race. But they can't. Always have to inject that in it. Every time. It's disgusting. It really is. And it further divides. From all accounts, these individuals, these youngsters, were friends with each other, right? From all the photos you see of them together, how could you reach any other conclusion? Do they not believe that two high school kids of different races can be friends? They just don't acknowledge that. It's ridiculous. It totally is. So, and you got to respect that the parents of the other three, they have the right, and honestly, they have the duty to stand with their children in the face of these allegations, and certainly let the facts emerge and be corroborated and substantiated. That's the way our system works. But man, they've already jumped to conclusions on this. It's a sad deal. We'll keep you up with whatever news we learn about it, any new developing information. Aaron in Meridian says, want to brag on my nephew, Sullivan Reed. He's a high school senior at Lamar School in Meridian, invited to the MLB High School Home Run Derby in Philadelphia that's Pennsylvania, for All-Star Weekend this past Friday. He finished first Friday, so he will compete tonight with the guy that finished second at the MLB Home Run Derby, 7 o'clock on Netflix. That will determine who is the high school home run champion. Wishing him all the best. Congratulations, Aaron. That's awesome. I know that is just an incredible experience. Chris from Oxford says, Gerard Fox was talking a few minutes ago. They're under the impression that they may go with the calendar route on Lindsey Graham and put his sister in there. Yeah, I mean, they certainly could do that. The governor has that prerogative, has that power, and again, that would endure for the duration of the year until the next senator is determined in November. Coming right back.
Now you're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Sinora, shake your body line. Shake, 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 Sinora, shake it all the time. Work, 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 Sinora, work your body line. Work, 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 Sinora.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. So we were talking earlier about this rise of support for socialism in this country, especially among those under the age of 35. And I'm looking at a photo of a recent Democratic Socialist of America event. I'm going to say that there's a couple hundred people present. More than half of them have masks on. Why don't they show their face? What's up with that?
Well, they might be suffering from long COVID, whatever that is.
Oh, I see. More than half of them in the room? Okay.
Well, you'd have to be pretty neurotic to really buy into all the DSA crap.
So someone posted a meme that's got me laughing. You heard me laughing on the break when I saw it underneath this post of this photo. And it's your typical liberal, crazy-looking female, the pink hair, kind of the butch haircut, and the upside-down cross on the temple there, and the big glasses. And next to it says, I have depression and anxiety. I'm confused about my gender. I'm unemployed and in serious debt. I spend most of my money on weed, hair dye, and anime. What is that? Some sort of drug? A-N-I-M-E? I don't even know what that is. I'm vegan, but still overweight. Anime, okay. I'm vegan, but still overweight due to zero impulse control. That's just perfect. Absolutely perfect. Crosby Simmons says in Inverness, I would bet most of them have rich parents. They know nothing of hunger. Let them live under communism. In about 5 years, let's see how much they love it. Thank you both for a radio show that has some integrity. You're absolutely right, Crosby. I have described that before on the program. A couple of years ago, I kind of ascribed this term to exactly what Crosby's talking about. I call it incumbency. It's like when you're just born without ever having to worry about anything. You tend to go wacko for some reason. You need to be tested. You need some stress. You need some challenges. You need some pain. I referred to Jensen Huang. He's the CEO of NVIDIA. What a brilliant CEO he is, and technologist, entrepreneur. But he did like a big kind of town hall, if you will, to seniors at the University of Stanford, or is it Stanford University? You know, the august California institution. And they were all approaching graduation. And one of them asked, what do you wish for us? And he says, I hope you all experience some pain. He said, I want my employees to experience pain. I don't want them to be harmed or hurt or have untenable circumstances. But stress and pain is good for you. It builds character. It makes you appreciate just how dang good we got it here. These are a bunch of spoiled brats at the end of the day. They were just born into all this. You're absolutely right, Crosby, and thank you to some extent for reminding me of that, but unfortunately it got me all stirred up. But it's true. It's absolutely true.
Good old champagne socialists.
That's exactly what it is. Darren in Jackson says, so let me get this right. Trump and all his cabinet are Nazis, but the Democratic candidate with a Nazi tattoo is not a Nazi. Well, and that's part of the problem I have with Ro Khanna, who does now a mea culpa and a reverse and says, oh, yeah, well, I called it wrong. Like, you didn't think before it came out that he was involved in sexual abuse? All this other baggage, that didn't bother you? The Nazi tattoo didn't bother you? I don't know. Pretty weak in my view. Charles in Matheson says, yep, the truth hurts. Absolutely. Paul and Brandon says St. Sharpton is in Mississippi. Why doesn't he come up to Jackson and stand beside the grieving families of all the kids killed in that area? Oh, wait, I forgot. They were killed by other black kids, so that doesn't matter. Amen, 100%. I think I saw a report, Rhino, where homicides in our capital city have now exceeded the number last year at the same point. How can a town of that size have over 100 homicides? 100 homicides! What's wrong with you people? Man. Sad. Man, I hope that we can clean that up. I really do. Got to get back to biblical principles, plain old human dignity, respect for human life. We're taking a break. It's time for Fox News, SuperTalk News. Dr. Phyllis Polk Johnson on the other side. Stay with us.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Don't forget it's a Monday. That means it's a short show today, 2 hours at 12:05 today. It's Ricky Matthews of SuperTalk Outdoors, but right now it's Dr. Phyllis Polk Johnson. She is the CEO and Executive Director of the Mississippi State Board of Nursing. Dr. Johnson, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning. Always good to see you.
Yes, ma'am. So full disclosure, Dr. Johnson and I have proudly served on a couple of boards together, have enjoyed serving with you, and glad you're able to join us today to talk about the state of the nursing profession here in the state of Mississippi. Dr. Johnson, tell us about that.
Well, as you know, the Board of Nursing is the largest regulatory agency in the state of Mississippi. We're responsible for approximately 80,000 licenses in the state of Mississippi, and that includes the practical nurses, the registered nurses, and the advanced practice registered nurses. And our job, our primary mission here is to make sure that the citizens of the state of Mississippi receive efficient and safe, competent nursing care from the nurses in the state.
Gotcha. So you guys just launched a new initiative. The acronym of ONWARD stands for the Office of Nursing, from the Office of Nursing Workforce. Tell us what that stands for exactly and what the purpose of this organization is, this effort is.
So we've had the Office of Nursing Workforce, Gerard, for a few years, but we decided that we needed to rebrand the Office of Nursing Workforce to widen the engagement and connect with potential nurses or potential students or individuals that had an interest in nursing. So we started this outreach initiative. Our board, which we have 13 members, approved that. The Office of Nursing Workforce Committee, which is chaired by Dr. Lacey Gentry, who is an educator and one of the board members, they had the insight to say, hey, we need to expand this and make sure we're reaching the audience that needs to be reached. So we launched this new outreach initiative through the Office of Nursing Workforce, and we rebranded it to call it Onward because we wanted to strengthen the state's nursing pipeline. It's a public-facing brand to better connect with younger audiences and clearly communicate the role pretty much of the program, and it's aimed at recruiting students as well as supporting those that are already in the nursing profession who may want to progress their education. So the existing nurses who may have an ADN or a BSN that want to go on and get a master's degree, become an educator, advanced practice, registered nurse, things of that nature. So that's primarily why Onward was started, to, do better outreach, I would say.
Okay.
To let people know what's available.
Yeah. So with respect to the market for nurse professionals, Dr. Johnson, where do we stand there? Do we have still continued demand that exceeds supply?
Well, that we talk about the nursing shortage and the implications of the nursing shortage. And we've had a nursing shortage for quite some time. I think COVID, put a highlight on that particular area and probably increased that nursing shortage a lot. But when you look around the nursing workforce and the issues in the state of Mississippi, Mississippi is primarily a rural state, but there are other rural states. Even in New York, they have rural areas. So the nursing shortage has a lot of implications at the national level, and it's due to the aging demographics. We're living longer, thank goodness for that, but we have chronic health conditions that need to be addressed, and the broader economic development goals. Growing the nursing workforce is really, really critical, especially in those rural areas, because the shortage is primarily driven by chronic understaffing, workforce conditions, high burnout. And so you have a large turnover. And then, of course, there are nurses such as me that are approaching retirement age, or preferment, as we like to call it. And so some are getting out of the profession and just retiring and enjoying life. And some are just going to other opportunities, because nursing is a business, and there are other opportunities that allow a great deal of flexibility in what nurses can do.
Well, Dr. Johnson, having been a professional nurse is your career choice, what would your message be to young folks that are perhaps thinking about entering the profession?
Nursing is a great profession, and as you know, it's the most trusted profession in the world, pretty much. The surveys that have been conducted year after year, nursing still comes out on top as the most trusted profession. Nursing is a great profession. It is a profession that requires a lot of compassion. It's not an easy profession to go into. A lot of people think it's easy until they get into it and realize it's a lot of work with nursing. You have to really want to do it, and you have to really want to be a nurse. So I challenge those individuals that think they want to be a nurse to either mentor or shadow with someone in that profession prior to going into it. It provides a lot of opportunities, and you give back. You give back a lot, but it's a very caring profession, and you have to be poised to do those things that sometimes young people don't realize that's involved in nursing. Yeah.
Absolutely, but it seems like a calling. I mean, those that I know are so committed, so proud, and we'll talk about the rewards of being a nurse.
Yes, the rewards of being a nurse to me, my career, and I don't want to talk about me, but my career started out in caring for veterans, and veterans have a very special place in my heart. And seeing the needs of those individuals and making sure that you're an advocate, because a nurse is an advocate for the patient, to ensure that they receive the appropriate care, the proper care. And it's not only the patient, but it involves the family. So you have to connect with all aspects of care, from the holistic point, which involves the family and caring for those individuals. It's a very rewarding experience if your heart is truly in that profession of being a nurse. As you said, it's a calling. Yeah. So you follow that calling, and if it's truly a calling for you, you would do well in that profession, and then you'll look at other opportunities where you can provide that giving back atmosphere that is so important in society.
And Dr. Johnson, here in the state of Mississippi, we have some outstanding nursing programs at the higher ed level, do we not?
Yes, we do. And we work very closely with the institutions of higher learning, which have the RN education programs. Dr. Melissa Temple is the Director of Nursing Education there and a great colleague. So we work very closely with them because our job, again, is regulation and licensure. But through the Office of Nursing and Workforce, we are able to connect and provide opportunities. So therefore, we have a great collaborative relationship with them. As for the practical nursing program, the Board of Nursing has jurisdiction over the practical nursing education programs, and that we govern those standards here. That was brought under the Board of Nursing a few years back. So there are about 15 community college programs that have the practical nursing program. I think we have one proprietary school. So very important because the standards, have to be adhered to ensure that those nurses are doing what they're supposed to do. And we also work with the Community College Board on the PN educational programs because we have to work very closely with them with the curriculum standards. So it is a collaborative relationship with education and clinical practice. And I always tell them, industry as well, and our policymakers, we all have to work together to ensure that we meet the needs to give the schools what they need as far as getting our students educated. So it's a joint effort, a collaborative effort.
We got a couple of minutes left. Anything on your agenda you're going to be talking to the legislature about in the next session?
Well, as always, we want to continue this program. And so the legislature has been very good to the Board of Nursing in identifying that this was a need and giving us the funding that we have requested to, carry this program through. So we will continue to, seek the scholarship programs because we offer scholarships. I think we got $900,000 last year. We were able to expend all of that money. We have an NCLEX voucher program through Onward that pays for the NCLEX exams for our practical nursing and RN students that want to take the NCLEX. And we've had good success with that. We've been able to expend all that money, and more money is needed because there's always a need to ensure that these individuals have the money they need to pursue their education. One of the challenges before we get off that I would like to see all of us look at is paying our nursing faculty who are the educators a little bit more money because we may have a list of people trying to get in, but we don't have educators to teach them because they can go into a clinical role and earn more money than they can being a nursing educator. So we definitely like to see the nursing faculty
appreciate you coming
salaries on. Increase.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
You should have been gone, knowing how I made you feel, and I should have been gone after all your words of steel.
The great Steve Perry from his solo album, Oh Sherry. Appreciate that, Rhino. So, could you cue up the breaking news Chiron, please? Huge news. I have in my hand the water with the iconic SuperTalk Mississippi Media logo imprinted on the container. I want you to know that the refrigerator in the green room has been restocked with the official SuperTalk water. Oh, my gosh. The president says the Hormuz Strait is open and will remain open with or without Iran. We are reinstating the Iranian blockade, so named because it is only stopping Iran's ships or customers from entering or leaving. All other countries will have fair and open use of the strait. The USA will be, from this point forward, known as the guardian of the Hormuz Strait. But as such, and as a matter of fairness, will be reimbursed at the rate of 20% on all cargo shipped for and all costs necessary to do the job of providing safety and security to this very volatile section of the world. The process and formation will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So, because of the series of attacks that are occurring, I should say, in the Strait, the markets are selling off. The Dow down 180 points. The NASDAQ down over 300 points last I checked. And oil, unfortunately, is up rather sharply today, now approaching the $80 a barrel mark. So we're certainly going in the wrong direction on that. The 10-year Treasury yield also up rather sharply. That's important because that drives mortgage rates and any other sort of long-term financing, vehicle financing, and so forth. So markets don't like that. Yeah, the Dow down just flashed 310 points. Also, I did receive a text from Caleb Sailors from our news department. He said, it doesn't help that Al Sharpton said, and I quote, "Let's not make this about race," end quote, in relation to the Nolan Wells case. Right. That's kind of typical of how Sharpton operates, I would say, Rhino. On the C Spire text line, good morning, Gerard. First day I've had a chance to listen to the show after being out all last week for our annual camp meeting, talking about the United Pentecostal Church's Mississippi District's annual camp meeting, always held this time of year. I was unable to greet you, but I did want to say that we were delighted that you chose to come and worship the Lord with us Wednesday night at our camp meeting. I listen to your show almost every day and enjoy your viewpoints. You have certainly educated me on several different political issues, and I do appreciate that. Thank you. Hope you have a great day. Thank you. Really appreciate the kind words, and absolutely always enjoy joining you guys for worship services. It's difficult to describe, honestly, Rhino, but I posted something on my social media. There are a number of words, I think, individual words that are very fitting. But I always appreciate just being so well received and so welcome. They're so pleased that you come and join them for the worship services, and absolutely couldn't be more gracious and more welcoming. And, of course, the message is always great. It's always uplifting, inspirational, energetic, spirit-filled. Just a few words, I think, adequately describe the Pentecostal Church's worship services. But really great people, and the Pentecostal Church, certainly in the state of Mississippi, I think is a very valuable asset to our state. Let's see what we got here on the C Spire text line as well. I bet the nursing shortage in Mississippi is mostly in Benny Thompson's poor district. That from Coroner Allen from Aberdeen. You could be right, Allen. I haven't looked at it lately. I don't think, unfortunately, the congressman pays attention to stuff like that. He's too busy trying to call attention to himself and gain more power, it seems like. Scott in Raleigh says, I'm sorry I didn't see this. You know, Scott, it's really hard, as Rhino knows, to engage with the text line when you're conducting an interview. I apologize for this. Wanted to know what the Board of Nursing is doing to address the two major factors that contribute to our nursing shortage: facilities with unsafe nurse-to-patient ratios, low wages for nurses. I'm a little surprised at the wages. Although I haven't researched this to understand what the average compensation is for the various nurse levels and professions and designations. But I guess what surprises is we have a shortage, why are wages low? Because typically when you've got demand of some profession exceeding supply, the prospective employee is kind of in the driver's seat typically. So I'm not sure what's going on here. What do you think?
That is a balance that was precarious at best before COVID and has been exacerbated since, because in order to make up any shortfall you have in manpower, as far as a nursing shortage, you bring in travel nurses, which charge, in some cases, 4 or 5 times as much as the hourly rate for your regular staffed nurses. So it's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle. You have nurses that leave the profession as far as being a nurse at a particular office or hospital to become a travel nurse so they can make more money, and that exacerbates the shortage, and you have to fill the shortage with travel nurses, and it just keeps snowballing.
It's something that Paula Meridian highlighted on the C Spire text line. He says, we always hear about teacher pay raises. Nurses are way underpaid in Mississippi. They don't get all the holiday pay like teachers. Also don't have the generous retirement, Paul, as well. And they don't and they need to stop paying travel nurses almost $100 an hour when the regular nurses are barely making $23. Another thing no one considers is that there's a need for daycare centers for nurses. There are no 12-hour daycares. Yeah, I think that's a good point as well. So do they work frequently 12-hour shifts? Yeah. And my guess is there's some value in the continuity when you're delivering health care like that, right? So that's the 12 hours, but they have kind of a staggered schedule, like off an entire day or two, and then 12 hours is typically. I just remember that from growing up 2 doors down from an RN at Baptist Hospital, and I remember her often having to be asleep during the day, and we go in the house, and my friends, I'm talking at 10 or 12 years old, we got to be quiet. My mom's sleeping. She goes in at work at 7 o'clock tonight for 12 hours and stuff like that. Yeah, hours are brutal, no doubt about it. And there's some physical exertion as well, right, associated with the nursing profession. Certainly, if you're in a busy hospital walking around all over the place like crazy. I would say, Paul, I'm for letting the market sort out the pay situation. Maybe the amount of pay that these nurses earn when they sign up to be a travel nurse. And honestly, I never even heard that much about that until COVID, right, Rhino? That's when that really just gained a lot of traction, with a lot of nurses leaving their typical day jobs and signing up, like tripling their pay, right, to be part of a traveling nurse and all these consulting organizations. And they were inserting these nurses in, like, where they were needed. You signed up. The downside is you don't know where the heck you may be assigned, so you take off and leave your home if you're able to do that. The positive is you can make enough money in a short period of time to come back to a different situation, even a different, lower paying, less stressful occupation perhaps. And that's, I think, what was happening a lot. But yeah, I remember talking to folks I know that are involved in running hospitals and hiring people and talking about how difficult. I don't think we've completely ever recovered from that, have we, in the nursing profession? So yeah, definitely a problem that needs to be addressed. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From thecedro.com, Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
On the C Spire text line, whatever happened to Ben Crump and the justice he was going to get for the kid at Delta State that hung himself. Man, I hadn't heard anything about that. Have you, Rhino, any update on that?
As far as I understand, he has now ghosted that family and refuses to return their calls.
Oh. In fact, related, Louis from the 662 says, Gerard, why haven't the results from the second autopsy related to the hanging death of the DSU student from last year been released? We've asked the same questions, honestly. Not sure.
It's likely that the results did not match the narrative that
Correct.
Crump and company spun up.
Yep. Also on the C Spire text line, how can we have a Miss Black America, a black television station, black movie channel, black rodeo in Oxford, and they're not racist, and everybody who's white or different color is racist? I don't understand that. Yeah, it's a huge double standard, and belief by the race groups are that racism can only be defined when it's whites discriminating against minorities, including blacks, right? That such reversal of that scenario is impossible. That's not racism. I'm not exaggerating. That's is what their position is, right? Yeah. Robert and Brandon says results of the private autopsy will be released if they are damning to the white teen friends. Have you ever seen the autopsies from the death at Delta State? So a common theme today folks are talking about, I think Rhino hit the nail on the head because it doesn't support the narrative. And that's all they care about. It's disgusting when it comes especially to the most tragic of all human tragedies, which is death. An unusual death especially, right? Not talking about a natural death as a result of someone having disease or living a long time and passing away, but certainly when you've got young people, that's the ultimate death tragedy. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see what else we got here on the C Spire text line. The problem is pay, this is from Joel from Tupelo, a couple of texts. So pay is high 20s for grads, mid 30s for seasoned RNs. Really? That sounds awfully low. I thought it was higher than that. There's so much pressure from employees and families. You burn out, and like Rhino says, you go travel and make 85-ish for 3 months at a time under these travel nurse contracts. The problem is if you keep doing that, you're never going to build up any retirement. So then you have other nurses who are trying to retire, and you're forced to stay put and make the much lower wage. Not sure I follow that, Joel. If you have a typical private retirement plan, 401k plan, for example, those are not necessarily connected to your employer. You can transfer those and continue them, still your money. If you're in the public sector, that's different. Once you exit the public sector, you're no longer contributing into your public sector pension.
But if you're taking 1 month, 2 month, 3 month contracts,
yeah, you're right.
It's a lot of paperwork to roll that over for every hospital or office you're working in.
It is, and that's why we just changed some regulations related to that, where you can disconnect those from employment and have your own sort of private plans to do so. But I hear you, and that's a new phenomenon, by the way. Jerry in Pontotoc says Al Sharpton didn't run to Memphis when black police officers beat a black man to death a few years ago. He couldn't make any money from that. Yeah, I think we've certainly talked about that quite a bit, that when the scenario of the parties involved in these situations don't fit that perfect profile, you don't hear much from them. It's only when they can derive some sort of power and money and attention and fame from it. That's just really sad. Let's see. Debbie from Ocean Springs says teachers don't get holiday pay. They get a salary, and it's divided by 12. I'm not trying to say nurses aren't underpaid and underappreciated. I get it, Debbie. I understand. And I don't know, honestly, that there's any validity or significance in comparing nurses to teachers. There are lots of other professions as well. For some reason, it seems like teachers always get cited as kind of the baseline. I'm not exactly sure why, other than there are a lot of them, and certainly they represent the largest occupation in the public sector in the state of Mississippi, and I think that's probably true in the other states as well. Registered nurses, this is Scott and Soso, so this is a different set of data, and I haven't looked it up. Registered nurses in Mississippi earn an average annual salary of about $78,950 to $83,217. That's $36 to $40 an hour. While this is generally below the national average, it is somewhat balanced by the state's low cost of living. Yeah, I would agree it's somewhat balanced by that, but even if you apply the cost of living factor to our median household income, unfortunately, we still come out near or at the bottom of the list. I don't know with respect to nurses specifically. Ken from Forest says, I know I'm from out of town, but I've never seen more than 3 people on the public transportation in Jackson at one time. Do statistics exist? The appearance of mismanaged scheduling to me. We're talking about the union of workers that works for the private company that the city of Jackson outsources its transportation to with respect to the public buses. I agree. Now, when I was a kid, I seem to recall seeing the buses would typically have more riders on them than they do today. I think fewer people had vehicles. Back in those days, there were a lot of people that lived kind of in the outlying areas that would, in fact, take the bus to downtown, didn't have to worry about parking. Very inexpensive, very timely. Yeah, I don't see that anymore. Plus, we don't have quite the vibrant workforce in downtown we did, where all those buildings had people in them. Certainly when I was younger, growing up in Jackson. Yeah, I wondered that as well, Ken. Is it even economically viable? I mean, they come out as far as where we're positioned. There's a bus stop out here on Ridgewood Road, right, where we are at the end of...
And from what I can tell, it's one of the busier stops. Yeah.
But a lot of times you do see them moving up and down the roads in Jackson, and there's nobody on them. So I agree. I don't have any data. I don't have any financial data. It's curious, though, at a minimum. I bet the nursing, I got all that one already. So just talking through that particular issue here in the state of Mississippi, I do appreciate Dr. Johnson for coming on earlier and giving us an update from the nursing community in our state. She does an excellent job. She represents that organization quite well and their needs, and they are critical to the delivery of health care in our state. And so with respect to a shortage, I agree. Something needs to be done. Of course, as wages increase, if that's a big issue, then that also drives costs to the bottom line of the various healthcare institutions, and then that causes a problem with respect to insurance reimbursements. It could actually drive up insurance rates for us all as a result. There's some concerns kind of pivoting here about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve sitting at its lowest level since 1983. We're presently under a release that the president ordered back in March, and that's putting 172 million barrels. The capacity is over 700 million. It's below the 50% mark right now. So lots of drawdowns. Also seeing some reports that the salt domes themselves, I think I'm getting this right, they don't do well when you push oil into them, deposit oil in, and then take it out. If you do that with frequency, that causes some sort of problem for the domes themselves, maybe compromises their linings or their ability to permanently store oil. It's kind of meant to sit there for a very long time and only be extracted when you've got some sort of emergency. And at that point, you don't care. You just need the oil for national security purposes. That really is the objective. So They say that the stockpiles were initially designed for up to 5 full drawdowns, but these frequent releases are degrading the site's integrity. I'm quoting there from experts that know about that sort of stuff. Also said there's a bunch of aging equipment, lots of major equipment malfunction going on as well. This isn't good, guys. We need to address this because we do rely on that installation across Louisiana and Texas along the Gulf Coast there to make sure we got enough oil to power our military. It's really the original purpose of that, created back in the 40s when it was thought that whoever's got the oil is going to win World War II. That turned out to be the case, and that's a large reason why this country prevailed. Coming right back with a final segment on this Monday.
Yeah, do the mess around. Everybody's doing the mess around.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, so Rhino did a little research on the J-Tran system. That is the public bus system in our state's capital city, the city of Jackson. And it's not surprising that based on your findings, the system cannot stand on its own 2 feet from a financial perspective. You kind of shocked me with the amount of revenue generated. That would be from fare, right? I can't imagine any other revenue stream that they would have. What'd you say, about $400,000 a year?
Yeah, their revenue from fares is just shy of $400,000.
And their operating expenses are?
$8.5 million.
Unbelievable. I'm surprised it's that low, their operating expenses. But you did some further research and determined that the only way the thing's even viable is because the city gets these crazy grants from the federal government. At least one of them they have to match. So the city is losing money on operating buses.
Yeah, the latest granular data I have in front of me is from 2022. And on an average weekday, they service less than 1,500 individuals.
Unbelievable.
And then on an average Saturday, they service less than 800.
That's just incredible.
And when you break down their operating expenses, their fares barely cover labor.
Unbelievable. Totally crazy. You know, in our final segment here, I am often very critical of politicians who, I'm not even going to say stretch the truth, I'm just going to say spout untruths. I guess lying would be another word for that. And they do it for political gain, for political expediency, to appease and pander an audience when they make those statements. And here's one over the weekend from Senator Elissa Slotkin, the Democrat from Michigan, and this is about the SAVE Act. And she maintains that the SAVE Act, this would, of course, is the legislation in the federal government that would ensure that only American citizens are registered to vote and ensure that everyone who shows up to vote, either by mail, actually absentee is a better way to put it, or at the polls, is able to authenticate and prove that they are who they say they are. And it's pretty straightforward. It's what we do here in Mississippi. You have to prove your identity to register to vote, and then when you show up at the polls to vote, you've got to present photo ID, and that photo ID has to be verified. That the poll worker looks at you, yeah, that's who you are, and of course, then they check the rolls, and there you are, registered. So you're a valid, actively registered voter. Well, what Senator Slotkin says is that the SAVE Act would disenfranchise all married women. I'm quoting. You'd have to show your birth certificate at the polls if you have a married name. That's categorically false. It's just false. Now, I would agree that would be somewhat of a burden. Every time you go to vote, you'd have to show a birth certificate. It's a little burden, but it's not true. If you've been married and you have credentials that don't correspond with your original name, or credentials don't correspond with your married name, yeah, it's true. You've got to show a birth certificate to register. Or if in filtering the registered voters, you're highlighted, you're selected as one who doesn't match up, who for some reason doesn't appear in the federal government's database of legal citizens, and there's some sort of mismatch there, actually what the system says, or the legislation says, you're to be notified. You're marked inactive. You simply come in and say, oh, no, I'm here. I'm who I am. Here's my credentials. Here's my birth certificate that shows my original name. And you're cleaned up. You're good to go. You're reinstated. And even if you don't respond to that notification until Election Day, you can sign an affidavit and then clean it up after the fact, in which case your vote counts. That, I would say, is anything but disenfranchisement. Why is she lying like this about this?
Because the people that vote for her and think like her are too stupid to actually seek the truth. They'd rather just be lied to because it's a comforting lie.
Well, that's not what the bill says. That's not the requirement.
If a liberal Democrat's mouth is moving, you know they're lying their butt off.
Well, let's be clear. The requirement is for registration. Once you're registered, you're good to go. Permanently. Unless there's something crazy that happens up in the federal SAVE database when on a regular basis the registered voters are compared to that database and you get kicked out, you go clean it up, you're good to go. It's not that dang hard. To ensure we have accurate, true, valid elections, that's a small price to pay. There's no disenfranchisement going on here. She's just not being honest. Out of here today, back with you again tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
Your home. A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.